What's up? It's Brian Gregg back with another screencast on Handlebars. Today we are going to be talking about block helpers. So, in the past screencasts, if you haven't listened to those, definitely recommend checking those out. We set up a basic example of how to use handlebars, pulling in some data from a JSON file, and then presenting that using using iterators. The iterator we used specifically was the each iterator. Now, this is actually one of the built-in helpers within handlebars. There's a few for um, simple things like iterations and conditions. But what we're going to be looking at today is creating some of our own block helpers. And honestly, if you're going to be using handlebars in any sort of extended capacity, highly recommend you understanding the way that these work, because they're going to really be able to build out the richness of your application within your template. This is going to allow you to structure your data a little bit more logically when you're presenting it in your templates. It'll allow you to abstract out some of the formatting and other things that may not be relevant to the people who are going to be managing the templates themselves, allowing some of the work that you would normally have to do within the template to be handled within the scripting. So let's take a look at that. We have made some enhancements to our main.js file over here. Specifically, we've added in two new helpers. One is our uCase helper and one is our sort helper. We're going to take a look at each of these individually. The uCase is going to be a helper function that we apply to just one element within the context, whereas the sort function is going to be an iterator. We're going to take a look at how we can use iterators to loop through and be able to do things within an entire context. So the uCase, as you might guess from its nomenclature here, is just going to be something that's going to take an element within our template and set it to all uppercase. And this may not be the most useful function, but I think it's really good for demonstration purposes. What this is going to do is it is going to initialize our return value, and we are only going to have one object in the context to return. The object that's referenced in the context is getting passed in this function here, as well as the options. And when we set the return value, we are going to overload this function here within the options, and this function is going to call to uppercase on the context. The context, again, is the value that is in scope when the function is being called. So if we go back and we take a look at our index.html, you can see here, let's just go back to our page here. You can see here that as we loop through our main iterator here of monarchs, when we get to name, what we can do is we can say uCase name. So this calls the uCase function and passes the context of name. And we can make a reference to the this value, which is what we're actually going to put back on the screen. And we use the hash operator to let the template know that this is a block helper that we're going to be calling. Same as we did with the basic block helpers up here. We just are indicating that this is the start of a block helper, this is the end of the block helper, this is the name of the block helper, and this is the value that we wanted to present. If this was an object, we could say this dot name if it was an object that contained a value of name. But this is just a basic variable, so there's no reason to do that. And as you can see, this is actually going to take the name value and it is going to make it uppercase. So that's fairly simple. Let's look at something a little bit more complicated. What we're going to do here is we're going to create a function called sort, which is going to take our entire list here of monarchs and it is going to sort them alphabetically. Again, we are going to initialize our return value. We're again passing this to a function which takes in the context and the options. The options are the object that we're going to set our function, which is what's going to return the value which we're actually going to present in the template. And we are going to start by setting an array equal to the context, and we are going to call the sort function on the context. And again, we're passing this in an array, so we're going to use this as an iterator. So by using an iterator, we'll have access to the entire context as an array. We are going to pass the function a generic function into our sort function, and pass the a and b values. The a and b values are the two values that we're going to be comparing, and this is a you can take a look at the specs for this. On the Mozilla developer page, if you want to know more about how the array prototype sort works. But basically what it's going to do is it's going to take two values from the array and it's going to compare them. We actually do a two uppercase on them just so that we don't have case sensitivity causing the lowercase and uppercase to be sorted differently. And then we're going to check the two values to see if one is less than the other. If it is, then we're going to return -1, else we're going to return 1. And this is going to do a sort of all the elements in our array and get them into a sorted order and pass them back to our array ARR value here. Then we are going to just set up a basic for loop here, which is going to loop through the entire array, and it is going to return. It's going to take the function here that we just defined, and it is going to pass in the current index for the array, and it's going to add it into our return value and return that back to our template. So in just a few lines of code here, we're going through sorting our array and then passing it back to the context of the Handlebars template. And the way that we can now implement this is, instead of using our each function or our each block helper, we're going to use our sort block helper. And when we refresh this page, it does now have all of our monarchs sorted alphabetically. So what's happening here is we call this iterator function. It is passing all the values of monarchs back to our sort function. The sort function is putting them in the requisite order. It's passing them back in that return value to the template. And then as the template goes through, it is going to again call our block helper function for name and set it to uppercase and pass it back to our template. And it's going to take all of the other respective values for that array and it is going to present those on the page as well. Notice that since we're passing an object, we actually have to call the a.name when we do the sort, because we want to make sure that we're sorting on the name. We're not sorting on the object itself. We're sorting on one value within that object. And I mean, we can do whatever we want here. If we wanted to sort it in descending order, we can do that as well here. What did I do there? We can sort that in descending order, and it gives you quite a bit of flexibility here. If we wanted to, we can create different helper functions, or we can set some parameters so that users who were viewing this could change the sort order, or if there were, if they wanted to sort by the house instead, we can set parameters too for that as well. So you've got quite a bit of flexibility here in what you can do with your templates just using these block helpers. Hope this gives you a good overview of how this particular functionality works in Handlebars. And as always, subscribe. Hit me up on Twitter if you got questions at Ignore Intuition, and get me on my YouTube channel. Always happy to have discussions about these topics, and get some feedback about what you like, what you don't like, etc. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great evening.